All right, the mail has arrived. It's the end of the day and I'm super excited because I finally have all the parts that I've been waiting on to finish this build. So let me walk you through what we're going to be doing. Got some metal axles front and rear now that they're available, knocked off and no name brand. So those were for the pair like 33 bucks off of eBay, super cheap. I got these GPM extended axles and weights, and I bet you're thinking, why? I've already got them on here. Well, it's from my next build, but they have 15 gram weights, so I'm going to see if those are going to work on the front wheels on this one. So I may swap the 15s on and take those 5 gram off and use them on the other build for the rears, just to get a little more weight in front. I'm going to do metal trans gears since I've got a metal pinion on there now. Not the spur gear, just the normal. And so I'm going to go ahead and do a black transmission case. And I've got these little scale hubs, front and rear. So they look like lockers on the front and then scale hubs on the rear. GPM just came out with metal bumpers, rear bumpers. So I was kind of bummed when I got the bumper set for this, the RGT. I couldn't figure out a way to get the RGT bumper for the rear to mount up with the hinge. So I've just got the stock bumper now. So this one is pretty cool, and I'll get it out and show it in a minute. And they also just came out with the metal rear mount hinge piece, and then the metal hinge pieces for the rear that go to the frame. So those are both kicks. I've got some link risers I got off of Shapeways. I got 2. I'm going to use one on this for the rear. And I also got some spacers because I may space those rear links out once I get them on this riser to help with anti-squat and side hilling. I'm going to see if I can craft me a winch for the front bumper. And on my mini update, you saw I put the Fury Tech in there to test with this little 030 can. Well, I finally got this little micro brush motor, or brushless motor, excuse me. So I'm going to throw that in there because I was looking for something small enough that would be able to tuck under the interior and use the stock motor plate. Since I kind of built myself into a corner, don't really have room for like a big oversized motor or custom transmission plate, I don't think. So I'm going to see how this little brushless X-Team motor does, 4500 kV with the Lizard. So we'll see. And then I didn't even know these existed for the micros, but I saw these at RPP, so I picked up some soft and some mediums. I got 2 sets of each of these, and I probably could have gotten away with 1 because they're, I guess you cut them down, so really 1 package of 2 you can make into 4. I think these are 1 3/4 wide. So you can kind of cut them to the width you want. So right now I don't have any foams in these, and I was noticing, you know, quite a bit of weight, and when it's crawling, these were wrapped up quite a bit on the front. So I'm going to put some foams in there, and maybe that will fatten the tires out a little bit too. So we'll just see. I haven't used these, but that's kind of the end there. The last few little details and tweaking here with the motor and electronics, and see if we can get this thing kind of up and running in its kind of final state, and then I'll move on to another build. So here we go. All right, a little update. I got the metal rear axle in. I've got the link riser in for those upper links, and I've got, I believe I used the 3mm spacers and some longer stainless steel hardware. And I did have to pull this plug. I had the reverse light plug kind of going under the battery tray up front and double-sided, and I can show a picture of that, how that was. And it may, if I scoot it back, it may still work. I've got a little bit of clearance, so the wires could potentially squeeze in there. I'll just see, I may just route it right through here, but no issues with clearance. The only thing I did have to do, these screws that go through this forward battery tray leg, they were protruding maybe a couple millimeters, and so with those links spaced up, they travel further up, so the end of those screws can scratch the nice shiny links. And ask me how I know that. So you can either grind off, use shorter hardware, or I just use spacers, like 2mm spacers, to bring those out, so they don't rub anything. And then I did have to kind of figure out this riser. I started with it in the forwardmost upper, but as you can see, that would actually tilt the whole differential back, the same as if you put it in one of these holes way back here. It's going to rotate it forward, and it, so this basically sits at about level when it's sitting, but it just, it definitely rotates a little differently, because these link points are so far apart that the further they are, the more that diff actually wants to rotate. The closer they are, I think the more the diff wants to stay vertical or perpendicular to the ground. But I don't really think that's a big deal. I mean, it's not really much, and it's pretty much where it needs to be. So that's the rear end. I'll get all the weights turning back on here. I think I'm going to pull the fenders off, just to get a little more clearance to mess with the motor or transmission. I'm going to have to pull this, and then I will do the front axle and foams and get this thing moving right along. Here's just a real quick shot here of the original link connection, and then if you replace it with that riser, you can kind of see what I'm talking about. It almost looks like there's not, maybe the second row up forwardmost is in the same position as far as forward and a little bit higher. But you've got a lot of options there. You could even play with different custom links. All right, just a little quick note here that now Power Hobby, at least this is the Power Hobby gear set, they're shipping a spacer to get the spur gear assembly spaced off of these two screws. That apparently, I was reading, that was an issue. A lot of people had to fabricate, come up with their own spacer. You see those screw heads protrude. So a lot of people were getting binding, complaining that they weren't working. So you slip that on and you can see that'll space. I'm not going to put it on there. It's all fiddly, but that'll hold that spur gear right up off of those screws, similar to the stock has the spacer built in to get it up off of those screws. So just a note there that they've addressed that and fixed it. All right, I got a little update here. Hasn't been the best go at this transmission. I've been messing with this for about an hour, and it's all, I think, due to this metal kicks case. I don't know if something was off in the machining, but I believe it's that bearing that's stuck in there. I pulled that out once, but it's super tight. I don't know if it's just not seated right, because the transmission gears would spin freely and then kind of catch and grind a little and then spin and then kind of hang up a hair. And they did that with the plastic, with the metal gears, so I just put them back in the plastic housing and they're fine. I cut some screws down for this little motor. I hooked it up to test it, and it does work. I got the pinion off the other motor and onto this one. It does slide right into that motor plate and fit. I think I may have to use some little washers that I've got, since these don't have like a super wide head. So I'm gonna get that on there, and then I need to figure out, I guess I may have to cut the leads and solder this. The banana clips on this motor are smaller than the banana clips provided. I guess these fit bigger motors like the Surpass. So this does come with some, so I may just have to cut off these bigger ones or run to the hobby shop and see if I can find this connection with smaller ones, which I'm sure I can't. So this may take a little bit of time to solder up the connection for the motor, but so far mechanically everything is going all right now that I ditched the aluminum transmission case, which sucks. I did have to cut off the tip. I had to shorten this tip just a hair, maybe like 3 or 4 millimeters. I just used a cutoff wheel, same with these screws, to shorten it up so I can put my aluminum spur gear cover on still. But yeah, that's a bummer. I've got the Trio transmission gear cover on another one and it's fine. So who knows. All right, I got this motor in and I'm pretty happy with it. I did have to clearance the frame for the bottom back edge, just a hair, but I can get a super slow crawl. Super quiet. I did have to change the position of those link risers. I had to move them down one slot because again, that motor sticks back further. It sticks back past where that battery tray leg was, which was that hole. So that leg of the battery tray will get cut off. But you can see right now I just clear it and the links don't hit it, and then you can see that back edge. You can see I cut out just kind of a 90-degree there into the frame with a cutoff wheel. There you go, that's a good shot. So just make sure there wasn't any rub there and that transmission could bolt in flat. And then I thought I was getting some slippage on the brass pinion. And I think I initially was, so I secured it, I pushed it on there a little bit further in, but then I was doing a little test climbing and I was hearing that a little bit of slippage too when I would bind up on something. But then I figured out that is the new metal slipper clutch. It's got the little pad in there. It's a 2-piece spur gear and there's a little pad in there. So what that's really doing, I guess, is a motor saver. If you bind up, you can see my pinion's still going. The gears are still going, but that inner disc is not moving. It's slipping. You can kind of hear it. So then rather than your motor just bind up and burn up, you just give it a little more gas, a little more torque, and it catches. So, that's a little different than just the solid spur gear. So we'll have to see how that works in practice. But so far, this thing just loads of slow control. And of course, you just stop it wherever. And this is like not really messing around with the settings too much. I think this is their stock throttle curve settings. So it'd be interesting to see with it all put back together and the weight on there, and kind of set up some crawling and see how this performs. But yeah, after a little bit of fitment and fiddling, and if I hadn't put those link risers on, this whole thing would have been a little bit easier, but those caused some more clearance issues, just because they changed the geometry a little bit. And I've got the battery tray flipped backwards just for testing right now. Just want to make sure everything fully compresses, there's no clearance problems. So everything seems to be good, so maybe the rest of this will go a lot quicker. I was hoping this would just be pretty much bolt in, but it's taken quite a bit of little troubleshooting, but pretty smooth. It's just a little fiddly. Alright, another little update. Got the metal front axle in. I went back to the shorter servo horn. I think because I've got more throw now with these C-hub carriers being cut out rather than the cup shape of the stock. You see there, they've got kind of a cup edge instead of just a cutout and kind of a hinge top and bottom. So anyways, happy with the steering. That all went well. I didn't see any difference in that metal axle and the Hot Racing, name brand metal axle. However, when I went to reinstall the rear axle weights, the trio axle weights, these end pieces are different. They're narrower. They're just smaller all around, not as thick. So those axle weights want to slide on, and then you clamp them down with these screws. And even clamped down, they wouldn't grab it. So that's different. And then at the diff to the axle housing, there's no webbing. So this one, I believe, is a trio axle, and it's got the webbing, and the trio weights fit on that. That's just as thick as stock. So there's a little difference in the rear no-name China axle versus the name brand. So this one's basically brand new, so I'm going to take it off the Jeep, put it on this one so I can run the weights. I tried the GPM weights on the front. They wouldn't work with those inner wheel well or inner wheel weights on these RC four-wheel drive. So they wouldn't slide on. So then I flipped them and sanded down that inner piece, and the pin went in, the hex went on, but then this edge still catches, so you can't get full engagement of the hub. So I would have to really sand this whole outer edge and butcher these up. So I'm just going to live with it and leave those off. So I'm going to swap out that rear axle. All right, time for the final weigh-in. See if we can get this guy up on the scales. Very happy with how everything turned out. The scale hubs are super cool. Got some stickers on there for some of my gear, and that slipper clutch. So So I'm still getting used to that slipper clutch. I've tightened that down. You can see I've got the spur gear cover on the roof just to get that included in the weight. So yeah, look at that. We're about 1.25 pounds, 20.6 ounces. Still biased to the rear, unfortunately. So not too bad. I forget what we weighed out of the box stock, but I'll put that up on the screen. I want to say it was like 7 something ounce, 7.6 ounces or something. All right, a little closer view of some of the finishing details here. Got the sponsor stickers on. Some gear stickers. That rear bumper, sweet. There's the link risers, the spacers, metal axle, some more stickers. The winch, it came out great. Super cool. Just adds a nice finishing touch. At the front metal axle. And this thing is about as built as it can be. I'm getting used to that slipper clutch, and it may just be the weakness of the motor. I'm going to have to throw in probably the plastic spur gear just to see, but I'll put up some running video kind of playing with it as it is. I've tightened that slipper clutch about as much as I can. It seemed like it was slipping early, so I kind of tightened it up. So now, maybe it's just where the motor, doesn't have enough torque. But my next build, I'm planning a different motor, and if it all goes well and fits, then this may get a different motor. But due to the interior and the battery tray and some of the limitations right now of space, I wanted to try this little, what is it, a 1230 brushless, and it, like I said, it just fit in there perfectly with a little trim of the frame. But it's, it's basically like a 050 can motor, one of the barrage motors. But it bolts right into that stock motor plate, and definitely a lot of slow control, which is, I think just with the brushless you're going to get that. So then it's just getting the torque, and this one is 4700 kV, 2-pole, I believe. So anyways, I'll get some running video up, kind of test it, play with it a little more. But here's this bad boy. Alright, let's test out these link risers and spacers here. So what kind of side hill we can do with this top heavy buddy. Look at that, it's not bad. It helps to have this slow control with something that you don't want to topple. Just crawling around there. A little slipper clutch action. Get hung up on the belly. Slid back in that hole. So I can stay out of that hole. find a different line. These slick rocks are exactly that. Look at that, no problem. Look at that, right on around. I hope that these rocks weren't shifting. It's an added bit of challenge. Yeah, so nice. You got the speed when you need. So that's it right there. I hope you guys enjoyed this build. Got another one coming up. I almost have every piece in the other room ready to start it, so may give you a teaser promo here at the end, just so you can see what's coming. But I think that, you know, minus another motor swap at some point, I think this probably does it for this guy. So I'll try to get some more running video up at some point. Maybe take this guy outside in the real world one day. Ooh.